Hello, welcome to the Growing Design podcast, where we help you grow your design agency. If you want to learn how to price your services, how to sell your expertise, and how to attract the right type of clients, you've come to the right place. I'm your host, Ed Orozco. Let's get started. Welcome everyone to another episode of Growing Design. Today we have with us Zach Hill. Zach, can you introduce yourself for the audience?
Sure. My name is Zach Hill, and I am a UX strategist with a company called Scorpion. Mostly based in Southern California, but we have a few offices all over. And I've had previous agency experience and with other web design shops, and been around a little bit in both UX design and now UX strategy.
And that's in mainly in the Los Angeles area, right?
Yeah, where I'm currently working at, we're primarily kind of in the greater Los Angeles area, but we have locations, and now people, because of the pandemic, we have people kind of spread out all over, adjusting to the new work from home environment. But yeah, we're primarily, most of us are in Southern California.
Yeah, going remote.
Mm-hmm.
Zach, you have the Nielsen and Norman's group certification for UX design. Can you tell us a little bit about why did you decide to take the certification? What was it about? And what can you tell designers that are considering taking the certification?
So NNG is a Nielsen Norman group, and just in my opinion, they're one of the strongest, UX kind of law makers out there. Obviously Don Norman, Jacob Nielsen are kind of gurus in UX long before we even knew what UX even meant. And then, the people that work there is UX specialists and just know what they're doing. And so they create a lot of research and a lot of articles that support their research, but they also do these certification courses. And I was really interested in that because of the pedigree and because of the people who they have employed, and I just wanted to learn from the best. So I went through their program. It was UX management, so it wasn't really focusing so much on the design, but more on the strategy and the research side of things, because it's kind of where my career has shifted over the last couple of years. So some of the highlights were, a lot of stuff on workshops, how to create certain kind of deliverables that are going to make sense for your stakeholders or your clients, high-level processes, how can you connect UX design and UX strategy to solid business decisions, which I think is becoming more and more important in our field. And it's a little expensive, but to me, it's not as expensive as some bootcamps or other things of that nature, but that was probably the only downside, but I highly recommend it overall.
Yeah, and this Nielsen and Norman is one of the most, in my opinion, reliable sources for UX knowledge. They invest a lot in research, and like you said, they've been doing this since before UX was mainstream and was a thing. So it's a very trustworthy source of information, not only if you want to get a certification, but also to support your research. If you need secondary sources research, it's very recommended. Also, Don Norman wrote the Design of Everyday Things, which is one of the most popular design books in the history of design books. And Nielsen is just this UX guru. He's just he has a lot of authority in UX and usability. So that's very cool. So now you have Zach's recommendation. If you want to go and check it out, it's definitely worth it.
Yep.
And you're gonna learn from the best. So you also mentioned something that really caught my attention, is that the certification is very focused on business outcomes and what's the business side of what we're doing, instead of how we make things pretty, is how do we solve a business problem. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, as I've kind of evolved in my career, the business side of things have become more and more important into towards my deliverables and outcomes and just everything I do on a day-to-day basis. And it really should be more of a thing for designers in general. To your point, making pretty things is, to me, maybe just a quarter of, I think, what a good designer should be focusing on. So, I mean, there's some basic stuff that I think UX designers just could understand is, I think you brought it up, Ed, just making sure you're solving a problem. I know you see a lot of that in social media, and that's a cliche because it's true, in my opinion, right? If you're just trying to make things look cool, that's only going to get you so far. And one thing I would add to this too is that I think another aspect to this that's becoming more and more important is just the understanding of analytics and data, and how that coincides with the business goals and the needs of the user. And I think data is a great bridge between the two. And that's something I try to focus on day in, day out with the stuff that I do.
Yeah. Do you feel like, because for me, it seems that developers have understood this concept of what's the business outcome for way before than designers. I always feel like the developers are one step ahead of designers in a lot of things.
They probably are. Yeah.
And then we sort of catch up, but things like how do you help the business save money or make more money, or simplify this process through code, automate this process through code. So I think the same mindset should be part of the preparation and in the formation of a designer, whether that's UX or visual design. It doesn't really matter. Ultimately, they're all like different angles of the same thing. That's just something that I've seen working with a lot of designers and developers in the industry. And on that line of thinking about the benefit for the client, I know you have experience facilitating workshops for many of your clients. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I've been facilitating workshops for probably 4 years now. All kinds of workshops, but I would say the foundational workshop that I focus on is a design sprint. And besides the design sprint, though, I'm sure we could talk more about that later. Workshops is a great way to create clarity and alignment between you as a designer, the business, and the goals of the user. So everyone gets an opportunity to get on the same page. So a lot of the workshops I run day in and day out is usually around that kind of premise. Let's all get on the same page to solve the problems we need to solve, to make the users happy in the way we want to make them happy. So yeah, there's all different kinds of workshops, obviously. But yeah, I've been doing it for a long time now, and I just think if I joke at work, if I could replace every meeting with a workshop, I feel I've done my job. It's like my mission in life at this point. Well, that's how much I believe in workshops.
You should tweet that.
I think I might have before, and I think I should again. So yeah, if someone asks me what's my mission, to replace every meeting with a workshop, because they just work. I've never had a workshop not work so far.
A couple of episodes ago, we had Steph Cruchon on the show, and he was mentioning one of the things that came up during the conversation is that one of the reasons design sprints are so effective is that they organize the way in which people communicate, because traditionally what they call the brainstorming is just people shouting ideas at each other, and then if you have a higher rank, everyone is gonna be like, oh yeah, your ideas are better, and in fact it's not always like that. It's I think it was Johnny Ive that said once, often is the quietest voice the one with the brightest idea.
100%. Yeah, on that note, I've always, when I'm talking about selling workshops to stakeholders or wherever I'm, talking to people, I always bring up some of the best ideas I've ever seen, no joke, have been from the junior developer or the intern marketer or, the junior UX designer. They have the solution that is the best one in the design sprint. It's not the hippo. It's not the highest paid opinion, right? They're important. They need to make the decisions at the end of the day. But To your point, brainstorming, in my opinion, is one of the worst inventions in the history of business meetings. Because it's just groupthink, and whatever the leader says, we'll just do that. And there's just so many ideas left on the table when you just go and brainstorm.
Yeah, another cool thing about the sprints and I think workshops in general is that they bring people from different areas in the company. So, an idea coming, like you said, from marketing might seem like completely weird and bizarre for designers and developers, but might make a lot of sense from the business perspective.
Yeah, no, exactly right. I think it goes back to something that I always preach, and it's kind of a popular term, which UX is a team sport. And, there's a lot of people that need to be involved in UX, in my opinion, and workshops and design sprints, to your point, Ed, is a great way to get all of those people in the room, the marketers, the salespeople, the engineers, the legal department, don't forget that, things of that nature. So, as a designer, you need to be okay to kind of let go of your process, your secret design process, and let other people be involved. And your product and your end result is just going to improve because of it. It's going to be served.
Yeah, you mentioned the legal team. Some folks might think that's funny. It's actually not. When you are working in business development and selling design projects to clients, it's very important that you know what the legal procedures for your company or your agency are to save a lot of headaches down the road. Things like what do we need to include in the contract? How do we manage extra work, or how do we prevent scope creep from a legal perspective? What can we include? What can we not include? What happens if there's if we have to stop the project for whatever reason? So it's no joke.
It's not. I've seen, fortunately it hasn't happened to me too much, but I've seen it happen nonetheless, where a product gets stopped like 2 weeks before launch or an update because the legal department is like, nope, no, we can't do that. The product can't do this, can't do that, it can't say that, it can't say this. So yeah, go back to the square one. Now, wouldn't it have been better to just bring them in the room in the first place? That's what I advocate for.
Yeah, I never thought about it, but yeah, the legal department can like make or break your all your work for months. So talking again about the benefit for clients, hitting my microphone here. The benefit for clients and the outcome for businesses. You have had the opportunity to do business development and take sales calls in the past for some of the agencies you've worked with. Can you tell us about how that experience has been?
Yeah, fortunately, especially in the last agency I worked before Scorpion Toy, I was involved in a lot of sales conversations. And just from my experience working in sales, I think it goes back to, trying to kind of formulate my thoughts here. I think it starts with diagnosing the problem in sales calls. That was the role I played when I was taking those sales calls. And as a result, I was asking questions to kind of create clarification for the problem they want to solve and just kind of see where they are at as a business. So going back to that kind of business analysis that you're talking about, Ed. So I think a good salesperson in this business is focusing on diagnosing first, where I've noticed that a lot of problems focus on I see a lot of problems with salespeople in our industry focusing too much on a prescription. They're like, I'm going to make this awesome app, or I'm going to make this awesome logo, where they might not need any of that. They need, because you weren't really focusing on the problem. You're just focusing on what you want to make them. So that's what I would recommend in sales. Focus on diagnosing first and seeing how you could really help.
Yeah, that's something that I've noticed when we've hired people straight off these boot camps. Let's not mention any names, but they're really great at prescribing. They're really great at pushing a predetermined solution down the client's throat. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to do the wireframes, and then we're going to do the visual design, and then we're going to do the design system, and here you go, without actually being mindful of what's the direction that we need to take.
Exactly.
I don't see that in the in the curriculum. I don't see that in their sort of like education, which is it's something that worries me also, because they are, like, don't get me wrong, they're great programs and they manage to cram all of this knowledge that usually takes years to develop into, I think 6 months is now.
Yeah.
So it's great, but I do think if you're in an agency, if you're an agency owner or you are recruiting for your design team, be mindful that that's a training that you're going to have to provide for yourself, because it's not something present in their program.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. And I don't want to do too much bootcamp bashing either, because I agree that they're doing more good than harm, in my opinion, at the end of the day, because I think UX education there's still a lot left to be desired. But I think the overarching problem with boot camps is, I think it kind of goes off of what you're saying, Ed, that they have this they teach this very well defined perfect process that really makes sense and looks really good, but that's just not real life. And I think you see a lot of junior designers especially kind of making this mistake of thinking they have to follow an exact process every single time, where I think it's good to have that in your toolkit, but you have to be ready to be dynamic and fit your process around the problem that you're experiencing. Kind of going back to what you're saying, Ed, like, I love processes. I'm a process nerd, but I also understand that sometimes I have to blow that process up and, like, okay, we're gonna have to do this instead, X, Y, and Z, because it's gonna help A, B, and C at the end of the day.
Which is something that workshops actually help you with, because the workshops are gonna, like, bring up the elements that are gonna help you decide what's the direction that you need to take. And a lot of times what happens is you realize, oh, we don't even need to do any wireframings. Like, we already have this sort of like predetermined flows in the back end. So let's just go and prototype something. And then you just save a few months of work or a few weeks.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it goes back to how awesome the design sprint is. It was easy for me to sell design sprints because, like, hey, do you want a prototype and design and test it in 5 days? Who says no to that, right? It was really fun to sell them, because you're right. Yeah, there's certain parts of the process that you don't always have to follow. Sometimes you might need a bunch of wireframes, and that's great too. But yeah, you gotta find from my experience, this is why I try to add to my process toolkit, because you have to match the right process and right technique or output with the problem you're trying to solve at the end of the day.
Yeah. So we talked about asking a lot of questions, trying to diagnose what the problem is, and try to connect whatever the business outcome needs to be with what designers can do, or what design can do to get there. So do you have any other tips when you're, like, taking sales calls? Is like, do you have, like, what was, like, a particular experience that probably was, like, very enlightening for you when you were first coming as a designer and starting to do sales calls and talking to clients for the first time?
Oh man, what was enlightening to me? Sales is a job in itself. That was what was enlightening to me. There's so much work that goes into sales, proposal building. I mean, you know this, Ed, obviously, like proposal building, going through rounds of RFPs, responding to RFPs, getting in the top 3. Is it a cattle call? Is it not? Like, that was the stuff I was like, oh my gosh, this is, now I know why this is like, this is a thing. This is a job. So that was the most enlightening. I can't think of, like, a specific experience when it comes to sales. It was just learning that this was a separate job, and I was lucky enough to have a boss who really knew sales really well, as well as design. So he taught me a lot of the ropes, or I wouldn't know. I have any idea what I was doing at the end of the day. So I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question, but sales is tough. It's tough. It's a tough job.
It's great that you had someone that could offer that sort of mentorship for you, because I don't think designers have any idea of what sales is. Their designers are really great at their craft because most designers really love design, but again, that's sales and marketing is not something that designers are, or most designers are well versed on. So it is great that you had the opportunity to have someone, helping you make that sort of transition. In your opinion, do you think if you're part of an agency or you're, let's say you're part of an agency, do you feel like it is necessary for the person taking sales calls to have a design formation, or do you feel like anyone coming from any other sales background can learn the concepts and the vocabulary and start selling design?
That's a really good question. And I don't want to cop out and say either way can work, but in my heart, I think either way can work. I think it's easier to have a salesperson with a design background or an understanding of design to sell design for sure. But it goes back to what I was saying. Sales is such a challenging job in itself, where I think if you have a really talented salesperson that doesn't know anything about design, but they're just really great at sales, I think they can make it work. So I know that's a non-answer, but I really do think both ways can work at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it also depends. Like you said, some salespeople are really, really smart and they can learn very quickly. I was just thinking, some salespeople can sell very technical things, like, I don't know, specific parts from a very complex machine, or they can sell AI or things like that. I do think it's important for them to spend some time understanding the concepts.
I agree with that.
So that, you need to be able to explain to a certain level of detail. And what I've seen happen sometimes is that during the sales process, the first stages are probably a salespeople who's not a designer or doesn't have a design training. And then later on, like call number 2 or 3 or 4, you bring in a design leader from the company to explain the most, the nitty gritty.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a good process. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. If you could be a designer that knows how to speak the sales language, you maybe could be that design leader. That'll give you the fast track to accelerate your career, because that's what worked for me anyway. The people I was working with was like, hey, Zach knows how to talk in a sales room too. It's not just, he's not pushing pixels and running workshops. He wants to sell as well, right? So that helped me out a lot. So going back to what we were saying earlier, if designers learn sales, learn business, learn marketing, it's not just for themselves. It can be valuable to others, and they can get paid more. I want that for everybody.
It opens a lot more doors. It's like, there's this joke or this like ongoing theme on the internet. It's like, should designers learn to code, or should designers code?
Right.
But no one is asking, should designers know how to sell?
Oh man, Eddie, you're gonna get me on my soapbox because I hate the whole designers. You're exactly right. Like, should designers learn to code? And it should. No, oh my gosh, like I don't think designers need to learn how to code. I'll start there. Okay. Do they need to learn business? Do they need to learn strategy? Do they need to learn how to interact with CEOs and COOs? Do they need to know how to write? Do they need to know how to communicate? Yes. Sure, if they want to learn how to code, and especially to learn, again, to communicate with engineers, that's why they should learn how to code. Not to actually do the coding, but learning how to speak and communicate the language. So I'm rambling now because you just opened up this trigger for me. But
no,
seriously,
I love it.
Man, yeah. It's like learn. There's so many other things that designers should learn first before learning how to code. That's where I'll leave it.
Yeah, and you mentioned communication is for me a priority. Like, if you're super creative and you have the best ideas, no one's gonna know unless you can explain them to the rest of the team.
Yeah, I hate to break it to designers out there, but you're going to have to sell your idea. I know you have this idea in your head that, your design's going to be so great, it's going to explain yourself. Well, that's not the real world. That's never going to happen. people are paying you a lot of money, and I hope they are. And because of that, they want to understand what you're creating, so you're going to have to sell it. So at the end of the day, you have to do it no matter what.
Yeah, and like you said, all right, you can communicate with developers without being a developer. You can learn the concept of code is not that complicated. You just need to understand logic, and logic is really, a process. So an algorithm is just a machine following a process and taking decisions, air quotes, based on certain instructions it's given. You can do this exact same thing with people. When you're managing people, when you become a design manager, you create processes and you establish processes for junior designers for them to follow, and they'll make decisions based on hopefully their best judgment, but also on the training and the processes that you've put in place.
Oh yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And that's kind of where my career is going, is in the sense where just like I'm focusing, like I was saying earlier, just focusing on building processes, building culture. To your point, if you have that ecosystem in place, everyone from the junior designer to the engineer to the marketer, whoever, the people we were talking about earlier, just buy into those processes and buy into that culture, and it just, the magic that comes out of that stuff is really awesome for me to see. Just other way more talented people than me do what they get to do best. That's really awesome.
Yeah, at some point, I don't know who I was talking to someone recently who said, at some point you realize in your career as you mature and take a more sort of like management roles, you realize these young kids are doing fantastic things. They're so good, probably way better than I think this happened to me. Is like I started as a UX designer and I thought, I'm really good at UX, and then as years went by, I started seeing, oh my God, these kids are like awesome. They're way better than me. And then your job as a design manager is to sort of like direct that raw talent in the right direction and mentor them and like put those amazing skills into practice.
Yeah, I think a good manager, whether it's a designer or otherwise, is just to elevate other people. If you're elevating other people, you're doing a good job of being a manager. Yeah, that's the advice I'd give to people when it comes to management.
Yeah, I think this could be a great segue for sharing what you know, because as a manager, a lot of your role is to mentor younger designers or younger developers or whoever is in your team, in terms of processes, in terms of what's the best sort of way of navigating client requirements and what's the best way to tackle projects. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, I think mentorship. I believe in this cycle of learning and teaching. And I know you recommended Chris Doe's book on your website, and I got to learn this from Chris a few years ago. Just this cycle. You're learning, you're constantly learning, you should be in your profession, whatever it is, and take that and teach it to the people you're working with, whoever. But if you're creating that cycle, I think a lot of wonderful things will happen again. I think a lot of magic will happen. But yeah, long story short, I do agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Chris that tweeted this a while back. It's not from him, from someone else, and I'm so sad that I don't remember who that person was. But he posted sort of like, I think it was like a pyramid or something of like learning, or like a flow of learning. So there's different steps, different stages of deepening your into like the knowledge and the concept. And the first step is sort of like reading about it, or like or being exposed to the topic. Then you start doing it. Then you start anyway. The last step is always teaching. Like when you teach it, you have to simplify the concept in terms that, or in a way that other people who are not as experienced will understand it. So you need to understand it very well so you can explain it. I think it was also Richard Feynman who used to say something like, if you can explain it, then you really understand it.
Exactly. No, yeah, I was about to say, like, it's so funny that a lot of juniors are, people that are just starting a career, whatever it is, design or whatever, are so afraid to like teach and share what they know, but in fact, they're going to be better at what they do, understand what their craft way more if they just share. And who cares if someone calls you out or whatever? If that's, I don't know what you're afraid of. Maybe that's it. But then if you make a mistake or someone says, "Oh, that's not true," then you've learned something again, right? So I've been called out with whatever tweet or Instagram. I'm like, cool, I didn't know that. Thank you. Now I do. So just share stuff, and people are going to share stuff back with you. We live in this awesome time where you and I, Ed, we're talking right now. We're like a billion hours apart, and we're able to, do this because it's just magic. Right? So just put yourself out there and meet people. We're talking right now, and find other people and share your knowledge. There I am on my soapbox again. But yeah, just get out there.
Yeah, it's like people take it for granted, but the fact that now you can communicate with people who know so much more about certain things than you or are experts in different areas, and you can talk to them and learn from them, it's just so amazing. And then that wouldn't be possible if people weren't willing to share what they know.
Yeah, exactly. It goes back to that cycle. We need the people to share what they know, and then we get more people to learn that, and hopefully they share what they know. So let's continue that loop. I've learned a few things, but I feel that I still got so much more to learn. I'm making a mistake pretty much every day, dozens. So make those mistakes, share them, share your failures, learn from them. And then people are going to learn from you, and hopefully they'll spread it on. And that's, how we're going to all get better.
Yeah, and like you were saying, don't be afraid of changing your mind about something. If anything, be grateful that someone helped you better understand a concept that you were wrong about. No one's 100% right about anything. So we're just learning as we go. And the more we share with others, the more we exchange those ideas, the more we all grow.
Just be a humble, nice person that's looking to help others. It's amazing how far that will get you. Not just in design, but in life. Just those are the kind of people I try to work with. Just nice, humble people that want to teach me something and let me teach them something.
Yeah, that's another quotable segment right there.
Perfect. I'll add to the tweet list.
Yeah, that tweet storm.
Yeah, totally.
Talking about sharing what you know, you started a YouTube channel in which you talk about strategy and your career as a designer, among other stuff. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
The YouTube channel?
Yep.
Yeah, I started it a couple of years ago, or maybe even less. I've lost concept of time since we've been in the pandemic. I fully admit that I haven't spent much time on it recently, and it's been really just locked into my work, especially this year. There was a lot of changes in the company, the company I work for, working from home. So I just really had to be heads down, focusing on helping my team be successful, and helping our company be successful. But the YouTube channel itself, I would just focus on ways to, again, just teach people teach people to learn from all the mistakes that I was making as a strategist, as a workshopper, as a designer. That's pretty much the idea for the channel. I haven't made a video in a long time. Thank you, Ed, for bringing that up. I should probably do that again pretty soon. But yeah, that's what the YouTube channel was about. Yeah,
you can read your tweet storm live on YouTube.
That's a brilliant idea. That's going to be the first thing I'm going to do, is read my tweet storm on YouTube.
Yeah. You also have some writings on Medium, right?
Yeah, that's a little bit more recent. I've found myself being able just to write more because there's less setup, right, and effort to write than to make a video. So yeah, I've had an opportunity to write a few articles, and yeah, that's always been fun to, again, just share my thoughts in written form on Medium.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes, going back to this theme of sharing what you know, another thing that people are afraid of is, or they think it's as an objection against sharing, is that, why do I have to teach to other people? And the answer is everything you know.
Yeah.
Because there was a point in your life where you didn't know what you know today, And I can assure you there's a lot of people out there who still don't know it. So
Exactly.
if you share it, you make it easier for them to advance in their careers, and then everyone, we just make we build community, and that just benefits everyone. Better trained designers.
No, you're making an awesome point, and it kind of reminds me of that imposter syndrome that a lot of, I think, people have in general. They were like, "Oh, I'm not good enough to teach. I'm not good enough to share what I know." And I think you make a great point that there's at least one person out there that will benefit from your Medium article or your YouTube post or your tweet or your Instagram carousel, right? If you just reach one person, then you've made the world a little bit better today. So I understand the imposter syndrome. I've had to get over that. I'm not entirely over it. I don't think I ever will be. But just look at it as a way, like you said, Ed, you're just being part of a community, an active community, and it's just going through that cycle that I keep talking about. And don't worry about, again, sounding like a fool or anything.
Yeah, what's obvious to you and to your inner circles might be totally mind-blowing to someone outside your circle.
Yeah, no, I agree. And sometimes, when you're in it, and your head's down, you're doing the work, and you're running the workshops for me, or helping with the research, whatever. If I talk about a design sprint to another designer, they might have no idea what I'm talking about, or a workshop, or what's qualitative research. I didn't know, to your point, I had no idea what any of these things were like this time 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever, right? So I had to go and figure it out, to go and learn it. So, yeah, to your point, not everyone knows what you know.
Yeah, and then if everyone that advances their career shares, you just make it easier for junior people to, learn faster. Because if for you, I don't know, for me, there's a few concepts that took me a lot of time to understand through, working with clients, working with people, just, doing the work. And these are things that if someone had explained to me, the insight came afterwards, but if someone had explained to me that at the beginning of of this time, I would have made not even half the mistakes I did.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. It makes me think of another problem I see when it comes to kind of this idea of sharing, is that there's a lot of experienced designers or creative professionals or whoever that have this mentality, well, if I share it, then my big secret's exposed, and everyone's going to see the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, right? And it's like, who cares about that stuff anymore? Anyways, no, you're not so special. Breaking news, the techniques and the processes and everything that you do is not special for you. We're all doing it. We're all running the same processes and doing the same thing. So just share your personal experiences. That's all so I just brings up a pet peeve of mine. I see a lot of designers that are protecting their processes. That is something we don't know, and no one's allowed to know it.
Oh my God, that's so funny. That's a recurring theme in the podcast as well. People who have this fear of sharing because of competition, and that someone's going to take their jobs. It's let's just make something clear. You don't really have any special process. You don't really have any magical solution for everything. I can assure you. And even if you did, then you should write a book about it, and you're gonna get you're gonna get to reap the benefits of that new breakthrough that you came up.
No, that's a really good point. If you have something that's that special, exactly right, go write about it, or go make a lot of money with this special thing, and then I'll learn from you and share it, and then we'll just keep the cycle going in a different way. And another thing I wanted to speak to on this kind of hoarding, I'm gonna call it that. It's okay. There's plenty when it comes to competition. In my opinion, pandemic might have changed a lot of things, but there's still a lot of fish in the sea when it comes to design work and creative work. I mean, for you UX designers out there, have you seen the websites and apps out there? There's plenty of crap for us to fix. So there's plenty of work out there. There really is. So don't. My advice to anyone listening, don't worry about the competition and not having enough work. If you're good and you sell yourself well, you're going to get work. There's a lot of great work out there, and people need what we do.
Yeah, as long as there's crappy software out there,
Yeah.
there's gonna be a job for you.
Yeah, I was just looking at a website, today right before I started talking to you. I was like, what is this? I don't want to mention a name, but a big organization was looking to make a lot of money off their website, and it's awful. So
And they're probably making a lot of money out of their website.
I know, exactly. That's the thing. They're probably like, hey, well, everything's fine. But someone like us, Ed, came in and said, hey, yeah, I'm sure you're making 100 million right now, but you could probably be making 500 million if you fix these UX issues. No one's probably told them that. So the work's out there.
And then you just charge them 5 to 10% of
I know. Nothing.
that extra. And they're going to be so grateful.
Exactly.
And for you're going to go and buy the latest Tesla model if you want.
That's the roadmap. That's all you got to do. Find a crappy website, 10x it, make your little piece of the pie, and drive a Tesla. That's what we need to do.
That's so cool. Yeah. Okay, we've been talking about this, sharing what you know, and I also want to talk about the growth mindset, because I think part of sharing what you know is part of the growing mindset. But I think it's bigger than that. It's about you always learning more and you always trying to grow, not only to accelerate your career, which of course is a great motivation, but also for you to better understand your craft.
Oh, yeah, no, it goes back to this is a great topic, because it goes back to what I was saying earlier, where like there's a lot of designers that are in love with their processes and their ways, where the growth mindset to me means that you're constantly working on your process and how you do things, and are you adding new techniques, new exercises, new methods, mindsets. I think I drive my colleagues crazy sometimes because I'm always like, hey, let's try this new workshop or this new process or this new thing, because I'm like, this is good, but it could be better. I use an analogy with my colleagues, like we won that game by 10 points. I want to win it by 20 next time. I used to be a basketball coach and basketball player, so I always reference that. I'm like, that was a nice win. I want to win by more next time. I want the process to be even better. I want us to be even better. So that to me, that's a growth mindset. That's what it makes me think of.
Yeah, sometimes good enough is not good enough.
Right, exactly.
Well, sometimes it is, but sometimes you can just make things better.
Yeah. Yeah, to me, that's a really good point. And I think there's times where good enough is good enough. And to me, for example, an MVP or a good prototype, it's okay to leave your perfection at the door and ship it. That's probably a whole separate topic, obviously. But to me, I think the processes can constantly be perfected. That's what I pursue. Is like, can we make our UX process better, my UX process better? And the answer is always yes. It can always be tweaked. It can always be refined. And like we were talking about earlier, we could always find different ways to serve the stakeholders, the clients, and the problems we're working on, because there's always going to be new problems. There's always going to be new stakeholders wanting new things. So we need to build processes for that.
Yeah, talking about improving processes and like this analogy we made between processes and logic before, there's definitely always room for improvement in the field of processes and making processes. Otherwise, Google wouldn't be updating their search algorithm 100 times plus a year. If they keep doing that after being one of the most one of the tech giants in the world, one of the most successful companies in the world, is because they always find new things to add to their algorithm, which ultimately is just logic applied to machines or machines applying logic. So if they always find something to improve, you can for sure keep improving your process. Well,
that's a great example. Google is the perfect example of a company that could have said, oh, well, we're done here. We got this all figured out. And just everyone's going to search, and that's that. But you're right. They're constantly like, how can we make this better? And they fail plenty of times. Have you seen Gmail recently? Of course. I mean, it's not great. It could be better. And they know it, and they're going to make it better, to your point, because they're finding new ways to innovate and grow. And all of your favorite tech companies out there, that's what they're doing. The Apples, the Facebooks, the Netflixes, that's what they're doing. Amazon.
Yeah, it's all the growth mindset. Like, they definitely have the growth mindset. Maybe too much.
You could definitely argue that. I feel at some point Amazon's going to own the world. I think it's definitely on its way. But yeah, to your point, I mean, the reason why they're on that track is because they're never satisfied with their business model, with their business processes, and their business results. I think that could be dangerous. To your point, there's probably a whole other podcast we could have on the ethics of growth and the growth mindset. But especially if you're a young designer or startup, I think that's a good place to start: innovation and growth.
Oh yeah, the ethics of growing. Like at some point, growth just for the sake of growth, I don't think it's 100%
exactly
good for everyone. I mean, viruses live just to grow, and they're not good. And just look at 2020.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I think I read somewhere, I can't remember where I read this, and it was a little while ago, but I read somewhere that I think Japan actively, intentionally always tries to be like the number 2 or number 3 economy. In other words, their mindset is like, we want to sustain and make sure we have a viable economy, but it's not always grow to the point where it's like eating itself. So I thought that was really interesting when I was reading about, there's a whole country that's not obsessed with growth, basically. I thought that was interesting. I'm rambling at this point. I can't even reference the article I was reading. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So I think this has been a pretty awesome conversation, Zach. We talked a lot about sharing, which it's a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. I want to thank you again so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your experience and what you've learned in your career. Where can people go to connect with you, ask you questions, be friends?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to start to find me on social media is actually just on my website, zachhill.io, ZACH, not K. And there I have my Dribble, my Twitter, my Instagram, and my LinkedIn. I think not my LinkedIn. I don't know. I have my social media there. So I would start there, zachhill.io, and you can find all my socials from there. It's basically not even a website. It's just my socials and my name.
Yeah, I'll make sure to include those links in the show description so people can go and just click. It's a lot easier.
Come and chat.
But
I'm here. Sorry.
Yeah. And yeah, thanks again.
Of course.
And enjoy your evening. For me, I don't know if you realize, but now it's like
I'm starting to see it. I'm starting to see like some sun. There's some light out there. No, yeah. Enjoy your morning.
Thank you. Well, it was a pleasure, Zach. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. I appreciate it, and hopefully, we'll keep chatting again in the future.
Absolutely. Take care.
Bye bye.